Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Talks with Chug. Each week, we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. I'm Arianna Gonzalez from Chug Attorneys and CPAs, tuning in from our San Diego office. Please join me in welcoming attorney Mengxin from our Herndon, Virginia office. Hi there, Mengxin, and welcome.
Hi, Hi, how are you, Ariana?
Doing so well. Thank you so much for being here. Today's topic is From Conflict to Resolution, HR Practices, and EEOC Involvement in Employee Disputes. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. So if you have questions, please comment them below or email us anytime at info@chug.com so we can help you out. So let's start with the basics. Mengxin, can you tell me what exactly is the EEOC?
Sure. EEOC is abbreviation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. As long as we know EEOC. So it is a federal agency. And it play a very heavy role to prevent and prohibit the anti-discrimination in the workplace. They are very important because they have all the power to file the litigation even, for any discrimination they find in the workplace. And they also play a very important role because they can guide the employer how to treat the employee and how to treat employee fairly and to prevent any any discrimination treatment in the workplace. So they are really important, and what the guidance they give to us are very important as well.
Wow, that's really good to know. Can you talk about what these specific types of discrimination the EEOC addresses?
Sure. EOC covers quite a range. So it deals with discrimination, including like race, color, religion, and also sex, which includes the pregnancy as well, gender identity and sexual orientation, national origin, age. Who are over 40-year-old, and also genetic information. So, it's a wide range. That means that they're looking for a fair treatment in the whole procedure, including the hiring, the firing, the harassment, something like that. So anything related to the employer-employment relationship.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Can you talk about how this plays out in the workplace? What is HR's role in preventing discrimination?
Sure. HR absolutely will be very important because they play a very crucial role. The first of all, because they are the point of contact when the initial complaint raised by the employee, right? So they are responsible for developing and implementing the anti-discrimination policy. They'll also be responsible for supervise and to deal with the complaint raised by the employee. And if there's any concern raised by the employee, they will have to act quickly. And they also want to do, regular training to their recruiting team, etc. like that. So definitely HR's role is very important, and it is, the first buffer between the employer and the company. And if there's any concern raised by the employee, and have any threat in the workplace, they'll also be the first person to know.
Wow, that's so good to know. So, on the topic of HR, how should HR handle an employee's initial complaint of discrimination? What does that look like?
Sure. It is a really good question, Ariana, because when they receive a complaint, HR has to act, very quickly, because they have to take it seriously and quickly, act quickly. So they should first interview this complainant regarding the matter that which is raised, and they also need to make sure that they are they feel like they talk emphatically and there's no judgment, and also documenting everything from the very beginning to really initiate this procedure, right? And they will have to explain to the employee that all the conversation is confidential, and there will be definitely no retaliation against anyone raised such complaint. And if there's a necessity that they also have to separate the potential offender and the complainant probably in different room or different offices. So that's something that they can do at the initial, and absolutely after that they will need to check on the complainant regularly and to make sure that everything is on the same, everyone is on the same page.
That's such good information. So you did mention an investigation process. So what happens if an employee refuses to cooperate during an internal investigation?
Sure, it's a really practical question because sometimes the employee does not understand, or sometimes there are some other concerns. So I think the key is communication all the time. So the HR will have to understand the concern, why the employee feel reluctant to have an interview. Is that because of the privacy concern? Is that something about the gender issue? Because sometimes if there's a sexual harassment complaint in the workplace, and the employee probably want to have a person who be with them as an investigator who are with the same gender, to make them feel comfortable, right? So that's something that they have the concern, which is reasonable. So absolutely, first is to communicate with the employee to understand their concern, and if they're still not going to cooperate, and then absolutely from the company perspective, they will need to inform the employee the consequence of failure of cooperation. So because due to the lack of information, due to such failure of cooperation, the company may have to conclude some conclude in a not in favor of a way, as to the employee. So this is something that the HR will have to inform. And if employee is a potential offender, they also will probably as the last resort, the company will have to notify. This is gonna be serious. If you're not able to cooperate for the interview, we will probably have some consequence there.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty tricky situation. So can you talk about what HR is supposed to do if they actually discover discrimination during their investigation?
Sure. It is a really good question because timing is the key issue. So they have to act swiftly. It has to at least act within 24 hours, and to show that they are doing due diligence, and to provide sufficient protection to the complainant. The first of all has to separate the offender and the complainant, and to make sure that there's a private, and the information they obtain are all confidential, and definitely there will be no retaliation, and they will do a regular check on the complainant to make sure that such victim is be protected and feel secure. And of course, they will need to initiate a discipline procedure as to their company policy, and therefore interview regularly, and to make sure that both parties understand what's going on there. So absolutely, this is something that the HR need to do. And also, as a good practice, they will have to document everything, every conversation, every communication, every meeting, etc. like that.
Wow, okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about what happens if an employee wants to file a formal complaint. Is there a time limit for filing a charge with the EEOC? What is that time limit? What does this look like?
Sure. As first of all, we will have to know, general rule is 180 days. From the alleged discrimination action. But however, if there is a local or state statutes saying the same, then there will be extension to 300 days generally. So that's what the complainant have time to file a complaint. But the thing is that this clock gonna be ticked only from the last incident.
Wow, that's really good to know. So once a charge is filed, how long does a typical EEOC investigation take?
That's a really question. It's a really good question, Ariana. I think on average, EEOC investigation gonna take about 10 months, but it really depends on their workload and the documentations, and also based on the complexity of of the cases they are taking. So sometimes if there's cooperation issue, with the parties and, there's some witness issue, etc. So it can last longer. So it really depends on the facts, case by case.
That's such great information. So, can you talk about what HR can do to prepare for an EEOC investigation? Do you have any tips? What should they be looking into and preparing?
Sure. Definitely when EEOC is involved, I think the purpose as they want to do is to first to prevent and absolutely prohibit. So as to HR, it is very important for them to gather all the relevant documents, as including, the policy, anti-discrimination policy, the records, the communication. They also can prepare a timeline of the whole incident, and what they have done for such complaint. Because that's the efforts that they will need to have EEOC know. So therefore, the interview, the investigation, and the detailed timeline of events, these are all the things that they need to be prepared. And of course, they will also need to internally prepare who are the related relevant parties, and the better have a list of witness, so therefore that they are fully prepared. So the key issue here is that they will need to make sure the company is taking it seriously when the complaint is filed. So this is something that are really important. And of course, sometimes when people file the complaint, they do not like stop terminate right away, right? So therefore, the HR also wanted to make sure there is no retaliation at all um, during this period, because that's very important for them. It's strictly prohibited.
It sounds like HR has quite a bit of preparation on their hands for this then. So, is there a way to resolve these issues without a full investigation? Is this necessary? I mean, I've heard about mediation. So, what is the EEOC's mediation process like?
Sure, the mediation can be a good alternative. The EEOC offers different voluntary confidential, mediation process, as long as both party agree, because it can be shorter and less expensive. So therefore, it's a good way to do so. All the information will be shared as, the same. So the people can have a third party, mediator to help them to reach a mutually agreed settlement. So this is definitely a good way to do so. But again, they will need to have a consent from both parties first.
So, what happens in the case that mediation doesn't work? Can the EEOC actually file lawsuits against employers?
Yeah, Ariana, that's a good question. And the answer is yes. So as I mentioned in the first question I think you raised, EOC has the power to file litigation, but that's only after, every every effort has been, taken. So for example, there is no settlement, there's no reconciliation, and they do find, the discrimination in such report and complaint, and it is a public impact on that. So EEOC will love to take action about this. So therefore, I think, when the employer and when employee dealing with EEOC, they need to take it seriously, because they will need to cooperate and to make sure that's all for the best purpose of EEOC.
That does sound quite serious. So I'm curious if there's anything preventing an employer from retaliating against an employee who files an EEOC complaint.
Yeah, so when you are saying the retaliation, that's really important, because as I say, retaliation is something that can be very clear, obvious, but sometimes also can be, from a very little matter. So for example, the retaliation has to be, not including the promotion, depromotion, and assign some, complex, complicated work which normally not to assign to the employee. And also it's very important for to make sure that there is no retaliation, like even exclusion of that employee. So sometimes, excluding an employee from a meeting which he or she usually attends also can be considered as a type of retaliation. So therefore, we need to make it, serious.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you did mention discrimination based on disability earlier. Can you tell us what are considered reasonable accommodations under the ADA?
Sure. There are different methods that you can accommodate, including like modifying work schedule and providing adequate, equipment, assistive technologies. So these are some methods, to help. But of course, under the law, the key is that such accommodation shouldn't be, cause undue hardship to the employer. So that's the key issue there.
Got it. That's pretty clear. So can you tell us how the EEOC handles confidentiality during and after an investigation?
Sure, confidentiality is very crucial in such situation. The EOC and by extension HR, they should limit information to only the relevant parties who are involved in this document, the complaint. They use secure and restricted limited access to the information, and to make sure that all the people who has the custody of such information also be well trained. It is important to use the neutral language in the communication to protect the privacy as well. So there are a lot of things that they need to be cautious when we are talking about the privacy and confidential.
That's really good to know. So let's get into preventative practices. We've talked a lot about reactive measures, but how can HR work proactively with the EEOC to improve workplace practices to just prevent this from happening initially?
Yeah, so there were several proactive activities that the HR can take, such as participating EOC training, and they sometimes have like webinars as well. So these are all the training material that you can easily get. They also can use the EOC resources like fact sheet on their website and guidance document as well. Conducting audits of employment practices also help, identify the potential issues, and also, regularly checking and review the policy, anti-discrimination policy, and to update it to the latest version. That's also important to make sure that the employee are well trained regularly. That's also one of the things that the HR and the company can take. So these are all the good methods that you can prevent.
Wow, those are great practices for prevention. But in terms of policy, can you tell us what are some of the best practices for writing effective anti-discrimination policies?
Sure. So, Ariana, we help a lot of company prepared policy, anti-discrimination policy. So the word person has to be very clear and easy and understandable. So what we recommend that in the policy will have to list a prohibited behavior with the specific examples, like for example, it can be John went to our office and, make some jokes to someone else, and this joke is not appropriate, etc., etc. So make it an easy, understandable, way to describe such things. So this is a good way to do the policy to make people understand. They also need to outline the multiple, procedures, including, anonymous of options, and also listing the timeline, like the way that the company gonna deal with when there's a complaint raised, and to make sure there's no retaliation, that the retaliation is strictly prohibited, and also state consequence so for such violation, and to make sure that everybody is understanding this.
Those are all such great tips. And if you are watching this and do need assistance writing your anti-discrimination policies, please reach out to us. We'd love to connect you with Mengxin and she can help you out. So I have a few more questions for you, Mengxin. I know we're running out of time soon, but I did want to ask you a few more things. So how important is documentation in handling these kinds of disputes?
Sure, documentation is definitely the most important, absolutely crucial way, because it creates a clear and records, right? And to record every timeline, the events, the stories. So it also help the company to understand everything, because sometimes in the scenario, if one HR is working on one case but does not have complete and thorough documentation, and when that HR leaves, and then the company has no idea what was going on previously, that's gonna be an issue if it raised a question. So therefore documentation is definitely very important. It also helps to demonstrate that fair and fair and consistent treatment to their employees, so to support and to evidencing the good faith and independent investigation of the company. And also a good tip is sometimes the company probably prefer someone to the other to the other employee. That's also definitely not a good practice. So for a documentation to independently recording all the conversation communication will have the company have their own identity as a third party instead of a defensive one, or picking a side party.
Wow, that's such great information. So we've covered a lot about preventing and addressing discrimination. Last question for you. How can HR promote a culture of inclusivity more broadly?
Sure, it really depends on the how they practice and how they treat the employee all the time. The procedure can, the idea is from very beginning during the hiring procedure. Absolutely, the recruiting team has to be well trained, and they should understand what kind of question are prohibited and what are the questions are tricky that they should not ask. Which gonna raise the question and red flags. And of course, they will need to understand, the employee's needs, and try to make, different program for the employee so that they can join their own culture. And of course, have a regular well training session as well. That's also gonna be helpful. And also celebration diverse culture and perspective help create an inclusive environment as well. So therefore that there will be no issue in the future later.
Wow, such great information. Thank you so much, Mengxin, for your time. That is all we have time for today. So this does bring us to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Special thank you to you, Mengxin, for your time and sharing your insights with us. Very valuable information here. Please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you have any questions or suggestions, send us an email at info@chuk.com. Let us know what topic you want to see next. And make sure to join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you, Esther. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ariana. Thanks everyone.